Fernando Alonso lost the 2010 world title. All caused by a very serious strategic error by Ferrari, who put all their attention on Mark Webber, completely forgetting about Sebastian Vettel. The German received a title that seemed lost, and Fernando was frustrated and destroyed as he could not believe what had happened. And with that frustration on top, he would not hesitate to let Vitaly Petrov know, the one to blame for him losing the battle in that campaign. On November 14th, 2010, Vettel became the youngest world champion in history. A champion who did not lead the driver's table for a single day until the day it mattered most. Ferrari had no words to apologize to their driver, but they had to remain united. They learned a major lesson the hard way. And that would be the necessary fuel to go look for a new opportunity. It would take time to arrive, but eventually it would come. 2011 would not be the year of revenge, as Red Bull had corrected all the issues from 2010. And for that season, it would provide Sebastian Vettel with a dominating car with which no other driver even had a chance to challenge him. As Sep would win 11 out of the 19 races that year, securing his second world championship at the Japan Grand Prix, not without setting numerous records in the process. But 2012 would be a completely different story, and that season would be marked by fate. For Fernando to have his revenge against the one who had taken his glory in 2010. By 2012, Red Bull's advantage in their car had diminished, resulting in a more balanced competition with their rivals. McLaren had the quickest car at the season opener. The Red Bull team was slightly behind those from Woking, but Ferrari had made a mess again. The Italians had built a slow car, a car that terrified the Tifosi, when in qualifying both Italian cars could only be 12th and 16th. It predicted a terrible season for the Maranello team, but not all was lost. In the race, the car performed much better than in qualifying. And that pace set by the car allowed Fernando to finish that Australian Grand Prix in 5th position. This was a small relief for the Maranello team, but they knew the car needed improvements to be competitive. The race pace was already there. They just needed the Saturdays not to be a disaster, they needed an update to solve that problem, but this obviously was going to take time to arrive. And the first 4 races of the season would have to be a struggle for survival and not allow their rivals to get too far ahead. Fernando knew this and would go on the track to risk everything, with the intention of not letting the world title slip away from him again. At the next Grand Prix of the season in Sepang, Malaysia, again, Fernando would have problems when qualifying, where he could only get his car to the 9th position. But the race presented a completely different scenario, as a torrential rain hit the circuit and the race was forced to stop with a red flag. While the storm was passing, before the race stoppage, Fernando had gained 4 positions to reach 5th place. After the restart, he gained 2 more spots. Fernando quickly secured 3rd place after Jenson Button's stoppage and overtaking Mark Webber on track. And a lap later, Hamilton, who was leading the race, would pit to change his set of extreme rain tires for intermediate tires. But the slow pit stop would allow Fernando to overtake him, and now, with this, he would be in 2nd position. But a lap later, Checo Perez, who had inherited the 1st place, would have to make his respective stop, and thus Fernando would also take the opportunity to overtake him. Alonso took the lead just a few laps after the race restarted. The Asturian was doing well initially, but as the track dried up, his pace declined, allowing Checo Perez to start pursuing him, as the Mexican was showing a surprising pace, having better tires than his rival. He was threatening to steal a crucial victory from Ferrari that was vital to their aspirations. The Mexican was excited about the chance to secure his debut Formula 1 win, but Fernando was not willing to let himself be beaten when he needed it most. Checo applied pressure lap after lap, but a mistake in the final lap shattered his dream. Despite the complications and everything against him, Fernando had managed to secure a key victory. This despite Ferrari's pace, which showed that even though initially Ferrari didn't have a competitive car, there was no way to rule out Fernando in the fight. The 2012 season would be marked, among many things, by a historic event. 8 different drivers from 5 different teams would win the first 8 races of the year. Jenson Button's victory in Australia marked a historic milestone, providing wonderful unpredictability to the championship, which had never been seen before in the category. Fernando Alonso won in Malaysia, Sebastian Vettel in Bahrain, Nico Rosberg in China, Pastor Maldonado in Spain, Mark Webber in Monaco, and Lewis Hamilton in Canada. And this resulted in 4 drivers being separated in the Drivers' Championship by only 9 points difference after the aforementioned Grand Prix. And among those drivers were Hamilton, Alonso and Vettel, separated by only 3 points. Drivers with championship aspirations needed to secure more victories to pull ahead of their competitors. But what would happen one race later, I think not even the best scriptwriter could have come up with. Round 9 of the World Championship took place at the Valencia street circuit in Spain for the European Grand Prix. A round that had to be the equalizer between those who would fight for the title and the rest of the drivers who had achieved a victory or some podium. Vettel was eager to break away in this fight and add more victories to his tally. And with a pole 4/10 faster than the time of the second classified, he made clear his intentions to end the games in that season. But on the Ferrari side, disaster had come knocking on their door again, as the fears of the first races reappeared in the Ferrari box, as both cars had been eliminated in the Q2 classification with Mas in 13th position and Alonso in 11th. And on a circuit where overtaking was historically almost impossible, it seemed to rule out any chance of taking the victory on Sunday. But what would happen that day was something that no one expected. In Spain and in some parts of the world, Fernando is known by the nickname of Magic. And if there is a race where he showed off, that nickname originated in the 2012 European Grand Prix. During the first lap, Alonso overtook 4 drivers, reaching 7th position but remained distant from his title rivals. Vettel was dominating the Grand Prix with an untouchable pace. And it seemed that if there were no surprises, he would take the victory without any major problems. Once Alonso settled into the race, he began overtaking his opponents. But by lap 20, Fernando had already reached 4th place. On lap 26, Jan-Erik Werner and Heikki Kovalainen had contact, leaving significant debris on the track. The safety car was brought out to clean up the track. Hamilton and Alonso were among the first drivers to take advantage of this neutralization and pit for fresher tires. But when Hamilton stopped for his tire change, the front jackman couldn't lift the single-seater. Ferrari and Fernando capitalized on this opportunity to overtake the British driver. At this stage, Alonso was 3rd, trailing Vettel and Romain Grosjean. He had recovered from the terrible qualification, but fate had other plans for the 2-time world champion. After the restart, Alonso overtook Romain Grosjean to gain another position. Now it was between him and Sebastian Vettel. And the race pace of his single-seater made him dream of the possibility of going for the victory. But what a surprise he would get seeing what happened a few meters ahead of the restart.
Fernando Lidea stops. What?
Vettel, boss stops, reliability issues the car.
The German would have a reliability issue. This would eliminate him from the race, leaving Fernando to lead the European Grand Prix at home, in front of his fans, and in an unbeatable position to take the lead of the big circus. But for that, he still had to beat one more driver, one who began to resist letting the victory slip away. Romain Grosjean, who had an extremely fast car in that Grand Prix. For multiple laps, he pressured Fernando, seeking an opportunity to pass him and claim the win. But fate had already chosen the winner of that Grand Prix, and that fate would lend a hand to the Asturian. Another driver with a chance to steal the win from the Asturian was out of the race due to a mechanical issue. Fernando was already on his way to perhaps achieving the most special victory of his sports career. But fate still had one last surprise for Fernando, as with 1 lap to go in the race, Pastor Maldonado and Lewis Hamilton would have a contact that would leave the Brit out of the race. And with this, the 2 biggest rivals Alonso had were eliminated from the race. Upon reaching lap 57, Alonso won a Grand Prix that seemed lost, and emerged as the stronger than ever leader of the Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship. After this competition, Fernando would achieve a streak of good results, securing 2nd place at Silverstone and another victory at the Hockenheim Ring. And after the Hungarian Grand Prix, the difference that existed between Alonso and his closest pursuer was 40 points, an extremely comfortable advantage that both Vettel and Hamilton would have to work hard to cut down. However, Vettel got significant assistance in the following Belgian Grand Prix when Romain Grosjean's risky move took out Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. In the first lap of the competition, the Germans' 2nd place finish, along with Fernando's substantial lead, resulted in an 18-point deficit in their pursuit to close the gap. In the next Grand Prix in Italy, Vettel and Alonso would have one of their few fierce on-track duels. But let's go back a little in time, more precisely a year ago, as both had given us a taste of what would happen in this confrontation. When Alonso, while leading the race, tried to close off Vettel when he tried to overtake him, forcing him to go off the track and leaving us what for me is the most spectacular overtaking maneuver by the German. In 2012, Hamilton and McLaren were dominating the race with ease. but behind the fight was quite intense. Having Checo Perez marking one of his best races of his sports career, but also having Vettel trying to gain positions. During the competition, Fernando found Sebastian, but now the roles had reversed and he would have to go on the attack to snatch the position from him. Exactly at the same point where they had battled in the year 2011. Vettel used the same technique as Fernando last year, but unlike Fernando, Vettel successfully took the position. However, the Grand Prix judges viewed the maneuver differently than in the prior season, and that would cost Sebastian Vettel a penalty for forcing Fernando Alonso to go off the track. And if things were already getting quite complicated for the two-time German champion, a few laps later, he would again have a reliability problem that had left him out of the competition. With the third place finish, Fernando recovered the points Vettel had taken from him in the Belgian Grand Prix. For Fernando's two rivals, the situation was getting out of control. In fact, Alonso was more concerned about Hamilton than Vettel, as Vettel appeared unresponsive. And without having a car as dominant or as fast as in 2010 or 2011, Vettel seemed like a less careful rival. But that Italian Grand Prix would be the last straw for Sebastian Vettel. From this point on, he would reconnect with his best version and manage to chain 4 consecutive victories in Singapore, Japan, South Korea and India. Combined with Hamilton's withdrawals in Singapore and Alonso's in Japan, he cut the huge lead Fernando had on him. Moreover, he overtook him and became the World Championship leader with a 13-point lead over Fernando Alonso. With 3 races left, there were only 2 title contenders. The protagonists of this video were set for a dramatic and close finish in the final World Championship races. At the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Vettel had a huge scare when he was disqualified for not having enough fuel. After his final timed lap, he had to return to the pit lane, forcing him to start the race in last place. And that also meant an unbeatable position for Fernando, to cut some points that kept the fight for the World Championship alive. But Vettel in that Grand Prix would pull one of his best races out of the bag, making up positions to avoid giving Fernando the opportunity. He finished 3rd, just behind his rival, taking the lead in the World Drivers' Championship. After the United States Grand Prix, Vettel led the World Championship by only 13 points. With a considerable gap, it was still possible for Alonso to reach it. That year, the season's final race would take place in Brazil. Life would again give us the chance to see Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel on a stage that specializes in giving thrilling endings. Sebastian Vettel versus Fernando Alonso, the rematch of the drama at the Jazz Marina circuit. The Spaniard seeks revenge against the one who took his glory in 2010. Vettel aims to make history in this sport. Wishing to fulfill the dream that had slipped away from Fernando years ago, the duel for the triple championship was before us. The final battle of these titans, glory or empty hands. Let's see. Let's see. Please, Uncle Skyline, play that music I like so much. Very well, let's start with this final battle. Vettel and Alonso arrived in Brazil with a dream ahead. An opportunity that comes few times in life, an opportunity to write your name in golden letters. In Formula 1 history, Vettel led Fernando in the World Drivers' Championship. To secure his 3rd World Championship title at Interlagos, Fer needed to finish on the podium. And wait to see what happened with the German. Sebastian, on the other hand, if he wanted glory, had to finish at least in 4th position, regardless of where Alonso finished. With the German being the favorite to be world champion, Vettel could only finish in 4th position in the classification. But Alonso had again suffered the poor pace of his single-seater on Saturdays and would end up in 7th position. An unfavorable scenario. Fortunately for him in particular, the weather was set to balance the scales between these two, as on Sunday a light rain had dampened the circuit. Not enough to mount intermediate tires, but enough to make the asphalt quite slippery. And once the traffic light would go out, the Brazilian Grand Prix would begin. Alonso aggressively gained 2 positions at the start, while a nervous Vettel lost 2 places. But it's at the sun curve of the Jose Carlos pace layout where the drama of the 71 laps run begins. In the 2012 Brazilian Grand Prix, Vettel would be rammed by Bruno Senna's Williams, and this had caused the German to spin and be relegated to the last place. Despite the damage, his single-seater remained in the race, but he needed to make a comeback to stay in contention. At this point, Alonso was poised to win his third championship with Vettel in last place. He just had to get on the podium to achieve the feat, and at the end of lap 1, with this damn madness, he made his intentions for glory clear. Fernando was already in 4th position, but it was still not enough. He had to be at least 3rd and Vettel not score a single point. However, in the race's early stages, he couldn't match the pace of the two leading McLarens. In addition to Nico Hülkenberg's Force India in 3rd position. Moreover, Vettel accomplished the monumental feat of bringing his car back into the points in merely 4 laps. What seemed to end Fernando's options, as he could not get close to the leaders, but he could not prevent Vettel's comeback either. But this was just beginning, and the weather was set up so that you couldn't take your eyes off the screen for the next 60 laps. For lap 55, the track was increasingly wet, but not enough for intermediate tires, resulting in a very slippery surface. During those laps, Nico Hülkenberg and Lewis Hamilton fought for the victory, but as Hülkenberg attempted to regain the lead, the following would happen. Hülkenberg would lose control of his single-seater and end up colliding with the race leader. The crash damage forced Hamilton to retire from the race, and the German was penalized for causing the collision. This left Fernando Alonso in 2nd position, and just in the place he needed to become world champion. Red Bull then called Sebastian into the pits to change his tires. The trend indicated that the rain would intensify and significantly wet the asphalt. However, the Austrian team believed the rain would persist with the same intensity, so they opted to put on another set of dry tires instead of intermediates. And this would end up being a very serious mistake. Because a few laps later, the rain would come down harder on the circuit and all the drivers would switch to intermediate tires. And this would force Vettel to have to make another pit stop to put on the appropriate tires. After all the chaos of the rain and the pit stops, Alonso was in 3rd position behind Felipe Massa, but a few laps later he would give up his position just to leave Alonso in 2nd place. And with this, the Asturian was virtually achieving his 3rd championship 14 laps from the end of the race. With his 2nd place, Vettel needed at least 7th to secure his 3rd championship. After Red Bull's poor strategy, he was in 10th place, needing to gain 3 positions. To win his duel against Fernando Kamui, Kobayashi would be the German's first victim. This to snatch the 9th position from him and leave him with 2 more positions for the place he needed. But Jean-Eric Bernier and Paul de Resta pitted, putting Vettel in the crucial 7th position he needed. But in addition, when Vettel found himself on track with his compatriot Michael Schumacher, he decided to give up his position to help him in his fight against Fernando. This left him in 6th place, which forced Fernando to go for the competition victory if he wanted to beat Vettel. But the difference between him and Jenson Button was more than 20 seconds, with less than 10 laps to go. And that meant that only a miracle could save Fernando. Vettel had done everything necessary, not only in this race, but across the whole World Championship. He returned to the championship with only 6 races remaining. He had overcome the scare of the start, he had driven his damaged car to the position he needed to be world champion. And he had overcome the poor strategy of his team. As I mentioned, he had done everything to achieve his 3rd World Championship. Alonso hoped for misfortune to befall Jenson Button or Sebastian Vettel, as he had no other options. He had done as much as he could, but it had not been enough. And on lap 69, Old Di Resta would have a hard collision. And with this, Fernando Alonso's dream also ended, and Sebastian Vettel became the youngest 3-time world champion in the history of Formula 1.
Sebastian Vettel.
Fernando Alonso for the 3rd straight time missed his opportunity to match Senna, Piquet and Lauda with 3 Formula 1 world titles. Once again, the dream he had pursued so fervently eluded him. On the same stage where he made history in this sport on September 25, 2005, Sebastian Vettel achieved the impossible, making a comeback in a world championship that seemed lost after Italy, thanks to a great car. An attitude of not giving up and outstanding talent allowed him to move forward and come back to win the title of the 2012 season, the title that must have tasted the sweetest to him. Both drivers gave us an exciting World Championship, a season worthy of a movie which will be remembered as one of the best seasons in the history of the top category. But unfortunately, this would also mark the end of the existing rivalry between these two, as from this point they would not face each other again for a World Championship. And fate would take both on two completely different paths, as Vettel would achieve another title a year later, dominating the season at will. 2013 saw a massive number of records being broken. This positioned him statistically as one of the best drivers in the sport's history, but Fernando did not. Would never fight again for a World Drivers' title. In 2013, he won his home Grand Prix at the Catalonia and Spain circuit. However, he would never taste Formula 1 victory again, as Ferrari failed to provide the Spaniard with the tools needed to become world champion. And then, the Asturian would bet on a project that turned out to be a total failure, marking the end of a rivalry that was not characterized by controversy, tense confrontations, or on-track battles. But it was marked by two iconic pilots vying for the World Championship dream through sweat, tears, and blood. How did you experience those Formula 1 seasons? Who was your favorite driver, and who did you support in their quest for glory? Sebastian Vettel or Fernando Alonso? Let me know in the comment section. I will be delighted to read each and every one of you. Before ending this video, I want to tell you that this mini-series will have a long break, as in order not to burn out legendary rivalries so quickly, we will give it a little rest. And we probably won't know more about this mini-series until the beginning of next year. But if you like this video and you like this mini-series, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, share it with your friends. Follow us on our Instagram and Twitter, links are in the video description. And see you in the next chapter of legendary rivalries of Formula and in the next story we tell on Skyline Racing. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.